So what are some techniques when it comes to persuading? We're not just handing people information saying, isn't this interesting? And did you know? We have sort of an agenda. We want to hand people information, but we want to do it in a way that shifts their attitude or their belief or their behavior. So let's talk about some ways to do that effectively. First, we're going to set a clear purpose. What is it that I am trying to get across? I need to be very specific, very specific. I'm not going to deviate. I need to be clear what I'm trying to get my audience to do or to think or an attitude. I also am going to have to adapt to my audience. If I want them to listen, I need to adjust my posture, my tone, maybe the language that I'm using. It should look different because this is when I'm trying to persuade an audience, I'm trying to hit a target. And I want to be as strategic as possible. And I can't help what I don't know. So I have to get to know my audience so I can adapt to them. This is a huge one. And this is two things, really. We're going to talk first about credibility. I need my audience to know that I didn't just show up one day and decide to have an opinion. I'm not an armchair expert. If I'm sharing about communication, I might say with my tone, I don't know everything. But I'm going to be honest and say, I've spent 25 years studying this. I have 2 degrees in it, and I'm passionate about it. So I want them to know this comes from a place, a little bit of expertise, but also a place of passion because people love that. This is huge, and it's one that when we get into the psychology of persuasion, it's so important. But that's this piece of establishing common ground. What do we have in common? When we jump into politics or religion or those really hard topics, we need to say, we all want people to be healthy and then go into healthcare. Or to say, I think that we all want to live in a world that feels safe and then talk about gun control. But find where you meet first so that you can develop some common ground to build on. We're building bridges early and often, and that's so strategic. You've probably heard of Aristotle's triad. Sometimes I refer to it as the holy trinity of persuasion, but here's what it is. And if I say the first one, I'm guessing that you, wherever you're watching this, could finish this. But we have logos, ethos, pathos. Logos is logic. Ethos is that credibility. Pathos is this emotional appeal. I always say logos and logic are easy to remember, and ethos we establish, right? It's credible. And pathos is we make it personal. We use some really emotionally charged language. We share a story. It's so important that we do that. All right, let's get into a little bit of, we've got a couple pieces of this that I want you to know. And again, I teach an entire semester on this, so we're just getting a snapshot of this. But we want to look at ethics, logic, and persuasion. How do we do this effectively? How do we layer it in a way that feels ethical and not slimy or inappropriate? So first, structure your argument. It should have a flow to it. We may start with a great story to open. We may really present evidence as if here's a problem that exists. And then we may say, here's what some people are doing and here's what needs to be done. But we want to make sure there's healthy structure early on. We're going to be very clear about what we're saying the problem is. When we're shifting someone's behavior, we want to make sure we establish that a problem exists. If I look at my kids and say, I want you to quit being on screens, they're going to say, what is the problem? Why is staring at a screen a bad thing? Why is it different than running a race? I have to present evidence that says this is what the screen is doing to your brain or to your relationships. But I have to establish that problem early on. Then I can go into the solution and be very clear that it aligns with that problem. Then, if I do it well and I have a logical argument, I have to ask something of my audience. So I want a desired response. I want them to vote. I want them to think differently. I want them to take the stairs and not the elevator. What is my response? What is the ask? And when I teach people to present, but also when you're persuading people in everyday communication, I'll say, make the ask real small. Make the ask real small. We're just building momentum. Doesn't mean there won't be a bigger ask later, but make the ask really small. All right, let's talk a little bit about structured reasoning. And this is, if you took an English class, they probably had you do claim, make a claim, have evidence, and then reasoning. We'll talk about a specific model by Toulmin. But claims. I do an activity in my class where I say, so-and-so is overrated, or Star Wars is overrated, or Starbucks is overrated. You have to agree or disagree. When we make claims, we have to say something that a person could agree or disagree with. So I might say something like, the speed limit should be increased 10 miles an hour. That's a claim of policy. I can't change the speed limit, but the government can. I'm declaring it should, and then you can agree or disagree. The drinking age should be lowered. You could disagree. That's what we call a claim of policy. Now, if I have a claim of fact, I might say vaping negatively affects your health. Just going to put it out there. You can disagree or agree with me, but I'm making a claim. And I may make some subclaims within that saying vaping often or vaping at a young age, or here's some more specifics to that. But I need to anchor my message on a statement that my audience can agree or disagree with. When people present evidence, or it starts to feel like they're trying to persuade us to think something or do something, we often will say, what are you trying to say? I should break up with this person, or I shouldn't take this job, or I should take this job. When we present evidence without really saying, here's the claim I'm trying to make, it can feel a little dishonest. When we make the claim, we better back it up with evidence. I can't look at my kids and say, video games are bad for you. I better pull evidence that says, I read this study. It says when you spend this many hours, your prefrontal cortex doesn't develop. Look at the brain of a kid who's on video games 17 hours a day versus a kid that's on it 1 hour on the weekend. I'm going to present evidence. I'm going to look and say, I think coffee is a healthy beverage. Then I'm going to say, here's the molecular breakdown. Here's what it does inside your body. I need evidence to support. We want to avoid fallacies. Your textbook gets into these. I'm not going to go into all of them. You can Google logical fallacies, but fallacies are unethical or honestly dishonest reasoning. You'll hear a fallacy in a political debate. So someone might do something. A classic one is called ad hominem, where we attack someone's character. If we're trying to persuade someone or we're debating, we'll say something about who they are or a mistake that they've made, and it doesn't have to do with the topic we're talking about. Also, maybe we have a classic one called bandwagoning, where we say, everyone is using this toothpaste. You should also use this toothpaste. It's not good evidence. Just because everyone's doing something, it could be a terrible idea. So we want to make sure we avoid some of those fallacies. Your textbook mentions this Toulmin model that's really important. So we have a couple pieces we're working with. Aristotle said we have to have logos, ethos, pathos. We have to have logic. We have to have credibility. People don't listen to us talk about things we're not credible about. And pathos, we need this emotional appeal. People are often feeling-centered. They're emotional beings that think. So that pathos or emotion will shift our ability to process or make decisions. Often happens subconsciously. Then it talks about this Toulmin model where we start with a claim, we provide evidence, and our warrant is where we link the two. So we make a claim, there aren't enough parking spots at San Jack, right? And then I present evidence that says, I showed up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. There were no parking spots. I surveyed 40,000 students. They couldn't find a parking spot. Therefore, so my warrant is my sort of therefore statement. I'm making the claim there aren't parking spots. I have evidence that supports the claim. We have limited parking spots. So I'm saying because there are no parking spots, we need to build another parking lot. But I'm making, if I say a claim like we need more parking, my evidence is then says, here's all the people that can't find a place to park, and I might take pictures of it. Then I'm going to say, therefore, because I can't find a place to park, we indeed do need parking. A warrant it can be synonymous with reasoning. I have claim, I have evidence, and then I have this piece where I have to connect the two and make sense of it. That's what we call structured reasoning. So We have evidence we present. We want to avoid fallacies. We are going to wrap this up. Again, I could teach for months on these topics, but we just have a little bit of time in these few modules. You are going to present an informative speech alone and then a persuasive speech with other people. To expedite this process, I'll give you a list of topics. I'll help you build your structure early so that the choosing a topic piece can move pretty quickly, and organizing your main points can move pretty quickly so that you can just get into the part of collecting information, evidence, reasoning, supporting points for your informative, putting it all together. I hope that after you take this course, that you would not avoid speaking in public, that you would understand that it is a really valuable skill set to have in your toolbox, that whether you are presenting face-to-face or online, I hope you get a chance to do it, and I hope you feel more confident and more prepared based on having taken this course.